4 years ago, Romania set its sights on modernizing its railway infrastructure. The country announced an ambitious procurement initiative valued at nearly $300 million, a project designed to bring cutting-edge electric trains to its aging transport network. The goal was straightforward: acquire 20 electric train sets for inner-city routes, along with comprehensive maintenance support to keep them running for years to come. By 2021, the bidding process had concluded. A partnership between a prominent Chinese rail manufacturer and a Romanian firm emerged victorious, securing what would become one of the largest transportation contracts in Romania's recent history. For a moment, it seemed like a textbook example of international cooperation, a developing European nation gaining access to advanced technology at competitive prices. But then, everything changed. Without warning, Romanian authorities reversed course. The Chinese consortium was abruptly disqualified from the tender. Officials cited regulations restricting participation by third-country economic operators, essentially companies from nations outside the European Union. The lucrative contract was reassigned to Alstom, the French rail giant with deep roots across Europe. On paper, the transition appeared seamless. Alstom began delivering trains. Construction timelines were published. Press releases celebrated progress. Yet beneath the surface, a very different story was unfolding. One marked by technical failures, massive delays, and mounting financial losses that would eventually exceed €6 million. Today, the Romanian government finds itself in an ironic position, taking legal action against the very company it chose over China, seeking compensation for damages that might never have occurred had the original deal been honored. This raises two critical questions that cut to the heart of European industrial policy and geopolitical strategy. What prompted Romania to abruptly sever ties with the Chinese firm? And why is the country now pursuing litigation against the European company that was supposed to solve everything? If you're interested in exploring the complex intersection of global economics, infrastructure, and international relations, please subscribe to stay informed on stories that reveal how these forces shape our world. Now let's dive deep into this unfolding saga. Romania, Europe's strategic crossroads. Positioned in southeastern Europe, Romania occupies geography that has shaped its destiny for centuries. The country serves as a natural bridge connecting multiple regions of the continent, making it an invaluable transportation corridor for both goods and people moving across European borders. Bucharest, the nation's capital, has transformed dramatically over recent decades. What was once a city defined primarily by its communist-era architecture has evolved into a bustling metropolitan center hosting government ministries, international corporations, and a growing service economy. The city pulses with the energy of a nation striving to catch up with its Western European neighbors. Among Romania's industrial sectors, textile manufacturing occupies a particularly prominent position. The combination of competitive labor costs and a workforce with generations of experience in garment production has earned Romania an unofficial title: Europe's Sewing Workshop. It's a designation that carries both pride and complexity. Approximately 91% of Romania's clothing output crosses borders into other EU member states, stitching the country's economy directly into the fabric of European consumption. Beyond industry, Bucharest has also cultivated its appeal as a tourist destination. In 2024 alone, more than 2 million visitors explored the city's streets, museums, and parks. Nearly one-third of these travelers came from outside Romania's borders, with Hungarian tourists representing a particularly significant portion. This growing cultural exchange reflects something larger: the gradual warming of relations between Romania and Hungary, two neighbors with a historically complicated relationship. This diplomatic thaw has given birth to ambitious infrastructure visions. Among them is a proposal to construct a modern electric rail connection linking Bucharest with Budapest, creating a high-speed corridor that could transform regional travel and commerce. It's a project that speaks to Romania's aspirations, not just to modernize, but to integrate more deeply into the European transport ecosystem. It was against this backdrop of economic ambition and regional cooperation that Romania launched its 2019 procurement tender for electric trains. The Chinese bid. Technology meets opportunity. In November 2019, Romanian authorities officially announced their search for suppliers who could provide 20 new regional electric multiple units, accompanied by 15 years of comprehensive maintenance services. The tender attracted attention from manufacturers around the globe, but few were as strategically positioned or as motivated as China. By that time, Chinese rail technology had achieved remarkable sophistication. The electric trains being developed by Chinese manufacturers could reach maximum speeds of 600 kilometers per hour, representing the cutting edge of high-speed rail innovation. Even more impressively, these systems incorporated fully autonomous operation capabilities. The driverless technology had achieved grade of automation 4, the highest classification for complete automation with no human intervention required during normal operations. The technical architecture was extraordinary. Trains utilized a dual positioning system combining 5G telecommunications with Beidou satellite navigation, China's answer to GPS. This integration enabled positioning accuracy down to the centimeter, precision that allowed trains to maintain safe distances, execute perfect station stops, and optimize energy consumption with unprecedented efficiency. All operational decisions, from scheduling to emergency responses, flowed through centralized ground control facilities that monitored entire networks in real time. Chinese rail products were already making waves internationally. By 2019, Chinese trains had been exported to more than 20 countries and regions spanning multiple continents, including markets as diverse as the Philippines and Germany. Each export contract represented not just a commercial transaction, but validation of China's emergence as a serious competitor in sectors traditionally dominated by European and Japanese manufacturers. For Chinese rail companies, Europe represented the ultimate prize, a market defined by sophisticated customers, rigorous standards, and enormous long-term potential. Romania's tender offered a strategic entry point, a project large enough to matter, in a country that might serve as a demonstration case for future expansion across the continent. When Romanian officials opened the bids, they found themselves evaluating proposals from more than 100 international participants. The competition was fierce, but the Chinese consortium's submission stood out. The technical specifications were impressive, addressing every requirement outlined in the tender documents. But what truly distinguished the Chinese bid was its pricing, significantly more competitive than alternatives from Western European manufacturers. Romania awarded the contract. At $300 million, it represented one of the largest transportation equipment agreements the country had ever signed. To ensure seamless integration with Romania's existing rail infrastructure, Chinese engineers even developed a customized train model specifically tailored to Romanian specifications, standards, and operational requirements. Production commenced according to schedule. Components were manufactured, systems were integrated, and testing protocols were executed. The first completed train was prepared for shipment, ready to begin its journey to southeastern Europe. And then, just as delivery was imminent, Romania pulled the plug. The backlash. When competitors become critics. From the moment Romania announced China as the winning bidder, opposition began to materialize. Competitors who had lost the tender didn't simply accept defeat, they mobilized. The arguments against the Chinese contract followed a predictable pattern. Critics emphasized that the winning consortium included a company from outside the European Union, arguing this violated principles meant to protect European industry. Some commentators went further, characterizing the decision to award the project to China as among the most foolish choices Romanian policymakers had ever made. But beneath the procedural objections lay a more fundamental anxiety, the specter of Chinese dominance in yet another industrial sector. European train manufacturers, already facing pressure from Asian competitors in global markets, feared that allowing Chinese firms to establish a foothold in Europe would trigger a cascade effect. With formidable technological capabilities and pricing that European companies struggled to match, Chinese manufacturers could potentially capture increasing market share, gradually marginalizing established European producers. As criticism intensified and media coverage amplified concerns about foreign influence, Romanian authorities found themselves under mounting pressure. The government responded by issuing an emergency ordinance, essentially a decree with the force of law passed without normal legislative procedures. This ordinance retroactively established rules that disqualified the Chinese consortium on the grounds that it included a third country operator, and redirected the contract to Alstom, the French multinational with extensive experience across European rail networks. Yet throughout this reversal, Romanian officials never provided a comprehensive public explanation for why they canceled the Chinese contract. The official rationale remained thin, focused narrowly on regulatory compliance rather than addressing the strategic calculations actually driving the decision. Many observers believe the answer lies not in Romanian domestic politics, but in broader geopolitical currents flowing through Brussels and Washington. The geopolitical dimension, Brussels and Washington align. The relationship between the European Union and the United States has long been characterized by deep alignment on strategic matters, particularly when it comes to policy toward China. In recent years, this coordination has become increasingly explicit as both Western powers have adopted more skeptical postures toward Chinese economic expansion. Across multiple domains, from telecommunications to semiconductor manufacturing to critical infrastructure, the EU and US have worked in tandem to limit Chinese participation in sensitive sectors. Restrictions on Huawei's 5G equipment, export controls on advanced chips, and investment screening mechanisms for Chinese acquisitions of European companies all reflect this coordinated approach. Infrastructure projects involving railways, ports, and energy systems occupy a particularly sensitive space in this framework. Western policymakers worry that Chinese involvement in such projects creates potential vulnerabilities, not just economic dependencies, but potential vectors for political influence or intelligence gathering. Against this backdrop, Romania's sudden reversal on the train contract appears less like an isolated administrative decision and more like an expression of broader European anxieties about Chinese penetration of strategic sectors. The pressure on Romania may not have come solely from domestic competitors, but potentially from EU institutions and allied governments concerned about setting precedents that could encourage other member states to choose Chinese suppliers for major infrastructure projects. For the Chinese consortium, the cancellation created immediate and substantial financial damage. The company had already invested heavily in customizing designs to meet Romanian specifications, manufacturing specialized components, and preparing delivery logistics. Industry analysts estimate these unrecoverable costs exceeded $1 million, a significant loss that the company could not simply absorb without response. China's recourse was straightforward, a formal complaint filed with EU courts, demanding that Romania compensate the consortium for all documented losses and pay contractual penalties for breach of agreement. But even this legal path would prove frustratingly slow and ultimately unsatisfying. Legal limbo when justice moves at a glacial pace. The complaint initiated a legal process that can only be described as agonizingly protracted. EU court proceedings, already notorious for their deliberate pace, seemed particularly sluggish in this case. Despite repeated requests from the Chinese legal team for expedited handling, the case crawled forward with no clear timeline for resolution. More than a year passed, then another. It wasn't until March 2024, over 3 years after the contract cancellation, that the court finally issued a ruling. The decision was complex, and in many ways, unsatisfying for all parties. The court confirmed that Romania possessed exclusive authority over commercial policy within its jurisdiction. However, the judges also determined that in the absence of specific EU-wide legislation on the matter, Romania could not unilaterally create rules excluding third-country enterprises from public procurement processes. In other words, the emergency ordinance Romania had used to disqualify the Chinese bid was ruled invalid. Yet this legal victory for China came with a critical caveat. The court noted that because China has not signed a reciprocal market access agreement with the European Union, Chinese companies do not automatically enjoy equal treatment rights within EU public procurement systems. While Romania's specific policy was deemed unlawful, this didn't necessarily mean the Chinese consortium was entitled to participate in the tender. That determination remained at the discretion of local procurement authorities. It was a Kafkaesque outcome. The Chinese company had been wronged, but the mechanism for remedy remained elusive. The situation became even more complicated when Poland, apparently taking cues from the Romanian case, began drafting amendments to its own public procurement legislation. The proposed changes would potentially restrict the rights of non-EU companies to file complaints after losing bids. If enacted, possibly as soon as 2025, such laws could effectively insulate member states from legal accountability when canceling contracts with Chinese or other third-country firms. The message was becoming clear. Even when European countries violated their own procedures, recourse for Chinese companies would remain limited, uncertain, and potentially impossible. Meanwhile, back in Romania, the supposedly superior alternative to the Chinese contract was beginning to unravel. The Alstom debacle, when the safe choice fails. In November 2023, Romania celebrated what should have been a milestone. The first Coradia Stream electric multiple unit manufactured by Alstom was officially inaugurated for service on the Bucharest-Brașov line. Government officials attended ceremonies. Photographs were taken. Press releases heralded the beginning of a new era in Romanian rail transport. The celebration lasted exactly one day. Within 24 hours of its debut, the brand new train experienced a critical malfunction in its onboard systems. The unit was immediately pulled from service and returned to maintenance facilities for diagnosis and repair. What Romanian officials hoped would be a quick fix turned into an ongoing technical nightmare. Months later, the system issues remain unresolved. The train can barely complete a single round trip before requiring immediate return to the depot for troubleshooting and adjustments. This renders it essentially useless for normal commercial operations, where trains are expected to make multiple runs daily to justify their enormous capital costs. But the technical failures represent only part of Alstom's contractual shortcomings. The delivery schedule has collapsed entirely. According to the original agreement, Romania was supposed to receive 12 complete train sets by February 2024. As of late 2024, only 3 units have been delivered, and even those are plagued with reliability problems. The remaining trains remain undelivered, their completion dates repeatedly pushed back. After protracted negotiations, Romanian authorities reluctantly agreed to extend Alstom's final delivery deadline to the end of 2025, nearly 2 years behind the original schedule. Every day of delay represents lost service, reduced capacity, and mounting frustration among passengers and transport planners who had expected these modern trains to be carrying passengers by now. Financial analysts estimate that these delivery failures and technical deficiencies have already cost Romania approximately €6 million in direct losses. This figure accounts for penalty payments for service disruptions, the costs of maintaining older equipment that should have been retired, and lost revenue from routes that cannot be properly serviced. The irony is inescapable. Romania canceled a contract with a Chinese manufacturer over regulatory technicalities and political pressure, only to find itself trapped in an agreement with a European company that has failed to deliver functioning trains on schedule. The supposed risk of choosing Chinese technology has been replaced by the very real costs of European underperformance. Now, Romanian rail authorities are preparing legal action against Alstom, seeking financial compensation for breach of contract. The situation has come full circle, from canceling a Chinese contract to suing a French company, with Romanian taxpayers bearing the costs of both decisions. And this is not the first time Romania has walked this path. History repeating. The nuclear power plant precedent. The train contract debacle echoes an earlier episode in Romania-China relations, one involving even higher stakes and larger sums of money. In the 1980s, Romania began construction of the Cernavoda nuclear power plant, a facility designed to help meet the country's growing electricity demands. By 2003, 2 reactor units had been completed and brought online. Together, these units generate enough electrical power annually to satisfy nearly 1/5 of Romania's total energy consumption, a significant contribution to national energy security. The original master plan envisioned 5 reactor units in total. Beyond electricity generation, the expanded facility was intended to provide district heating for surrounding communities. However, financial constraints and other complications forced authorities to indefinitely postpone construction of units 3, 4, and 5 after 2003. The incomplete reactors sat dormant, representing both unrealized potential and stranded investment. This timing coincided with China's dramatic emergence as a global nuclear power leader. By 2011, China was overseeing construction of roughly 1/4 of all nuclear reactors being built worldwide. With total assets in the nuclear sector exceeding $30 billion, Chinese state-owned enterprises possessed both the technical expertise and financial resources to undertake massive infrastructure projects. Romania saw an opportunity. In 2011, Romanian officials proactively approached Chinese nuclear companies with a proposal. Complete the expansion of Cernavoda using advanced reactor designs developed by China. For Romania, the appeal was clear: access to both technical capability and financing that European partners were unwilling or unable to provide. For China, the project represented a prestigious entry point into the European energy market, potentially opening doors for future projects across the continent. The terms were attractive to both sides. China would supply critical equipment including generators, turbines, and electrical control systems. The total project investment was estimated at approximately $5.1 billion. Chinese manufacturers began the complex process of designing and producing specialized components, meeting European safety standards and regulatory requirements. For nearly a decade, the project advanced steadily. Components were manufactured, technical documentation was prepared, and planning for on-site construction progressed according to established timelines. Then, in 2020, history repeated itself. The Romanian government abruptly announced cancellation of its cooperation agreement with China regarding Units 3 and 4 at Cernavoda. Shortly thereafter, the United States stepped in to replace China as the primary partner for the nuclear expansion project, signing new agreements with Romanian authorities to continue development under American technical leadership. The reversal rendered years of Chinese investment essentially worthless. Industry estimates suggest China's losses from the canceled nuclear project exceeded $3 billion, an order of magnitude larger than the train contract, but following the same pattern of initial agreement, substantial investment, and sudden political reversal. The pattern and the price. 2 major infrastructure projects. 2 initial agreements with Chinese partners. 2 sudden cancellations driven by geopolitical considerations rather than technical or commercial deficiencies. 2 subsequent problems with replacement partners, one involving technical failures, the other still unfolding. The pattern suggests something larger than isolated policy decisions by Romanian authorities. Instead, these episodes reveal the complex pressures facing smaller European nations caught between competing powers in an increasingly fragmented global economy. On one side stands China, offering advanced technology, competitive pricing, and financing arrangements that make ambitious projects feasible for countries with limited budgets. On the other side stand the United States and European Union, wielding enormous political influence and increasingly insisting that allies and partners limit Chinese participation in strategic sectors, even when this means accepting higher costs or inferior alternatives. For Romania, the consequences of navigating these pressures have been tangible and costly. The country now operates unreliable trains delivered late by a European manufacturer, faces ongoing litigation, and has absorbed millions in losses that might have been avoided. The nuclear expansion remains uncertain, with American partnership yet to produce the completed reactors that Chinese firms were prepared to build years ago.